Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello, and welcome to part 2 of the recruitment podcast that we're doing on Money Talks. And obviously, we can't have a Money Talks without the man himself, Mo Chatra. Mo, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Really good, Gags. Looking forward to this. Part 2, really interesting points to cover as we go into the Jurgen Klopp era.
We do, and we also have Darth with us. Darth, how you doing?
I'm all right, mate.
Back on the first part, mate. Excellent stuff.
Good.
We're going to dig into this one. We're going to get it going straight away because we don't want to waste time because we know this is going to be loaded. We've got 6 years or so to cover. 2015-16, so Brendan is still here. We did talk about him leaving on the last one at the end, but we probably forgot to cover some of the bits that happened just before he left. So big story. First one, Steven Gerrard left that summer. He was on 200k plus. He had a contract which allowed him to earn the most at the club no matter who was there. So if anybody joined and made more than him, he would automatically be bumped up to that. So there were some crazy things going on that we allowed to play, but it shows the desperation of the club and where we were at. But at the same time, you know, that was a big moment for the fan base as well, guys. I think we should just cover it just quickly just because it was a huge moment. There was a lot of sadness because, you know, it's never nice to say bye to a legend, but it was probably the right time for him.
Yeah. Father time catches up with everybody, Gags. It's just that it was just the manner of the departure, wasn't it? With the 6-1 at Stoke, it's just a disgrace.
It was all a disgrace
to end it like that.
Yeah, it was a sad kind of season. It was one that started with a lot of promise. Obviously, Suarez did move on. However, we did sign a number of players, and though there was uncertainty about some of the players that we were signing, we went into that season with Champions League football for the first time in a number of years, and we hoped that would propel ourselves back into being one of the contenders again. And obviously, most of those signings didn't work out, and we had. Let's not forget, some serious injury issues that season as well. Most notably, Sturridge. He was going to become our talisman that season, and yet he was out for the bulk of 14-15. And there were things like that which had an impact, and clearly, certain key signings didn't really settle in, and some arguably never did during their time at the club. So it was a whole catalogue of issues that culminated in a disappointing season. And, certainly by the end of it, many fans, not all, but many fans were clamouring for Brendan to go.
Yeah, Gags, I think we talked on the last on episode 1 that we said that 13-14 was basically the committee. We're given full control effectively to make the signings. Then 14-15, after winning, finishing second, it's very much reversed. With Brendan getting full control of most of over the transfers, and this final summer was very much a parallel recruitment. Both sides were allowed to make signings, which, when you consider all the uncertainty about Rodgers, and then was he even going to be kept on in the first place? And then he effectively sell Raheem Sterling to buy Christian Benteke, with a little bit left over in cash. It's not particularly smart recruitment, is that, Gags? I mean, we can debate why we got into that position with Raheem, But a lot of that, I think, was a lot of personality clashes with the manager himself. Yeah, which let it get that far. But then you obviously end up with the Neil Ashton piece on just before Brendan was sacked, when he was trying to bring Edwards down with him, basically saying that they were allowed to sign Benteke if the committee were allowed to sign Firmino if he was allowed to sign Benteke. So it's just it's almost like each person can choose what they want, but there's no thought about how it all meshes together, which is the complete opposite of where we are now. And obviously the poster child for the dysfunction was Mario Balotelli, who no one admitted to wanting to sign, but we ended up signing anyway. So there's an old saying that a horse designed by a committee, it looks like a camel. Because you have to compromise on what it looks like, and that's where it end up, and I think that was the peak, if you like, of the dysfunction under Brendan with the committee, and I think a lot of that shaped the way that we were going to go forward. There was going to be absolutely no deviation from what the model that they wanted to, the owners wanted to input. There was going to be no compromising. It was all going to be the full American sports style general manager with a coach, Gags. I think there was no compromising from that point onwards, in my opinion.
No, there wasn't. I think they wanted it. It just was a mess, mate. I think he retained some control. He had to lose some, and it just looked crap. And the way that some of his coaching staff had to leave as well.
Oh,
it was a
goddamn
shame.
Sean, somebody,
the Shorts guy.
Yeah, I know. He came from the lower leagues, didn't he? Somewhere, yeah.
And they bought Gary Mackin, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's just, mate, it just didn't sit well with a lot of people, especially with me and AI folk. We thought it would never been humiliated so badly, and people still wanted this manager to stay. It didn't quite make much sense for those that have a logical, rational, way of thinking, because results speak for themselves, attitudes. We've supported the club for 30 years at that point, 35 years, and never seen such listless performances.
Yeah, Sean O'Driscoll. James has just put it in. Yeah, Sean O'Driscoll.
Never seen such listless performances, like no fight, no desire. That there's something wrong when there's no desire.
Carlisle League Cup tie. Do you remember that one?
Oh, for fuck's sake, mate! There was some horrific things going on, but I think let's Mo. So that's the precursor of the season. It's tenterhooks. Everything's on the edge. So yeah, we had a manager who wasn't going to play people like Bobby in position because he like we said in the first part, vindictive. It's just not a right attitude. But let's look at the figures, mate, for that year. How did it end up going in terms of money?
So it was interesting in that 15-16 was the final year of the Premier League TV cycle, which is always a 3-year cycle, and a new deal would kick in the following season. But 15-16 only saw a £4 million increase in turnover compared to 14-15. Now, 14-15 obviously benefited from Champions League money. 15-16, we though had a extensive run in the Europa League, getting all the way through to the finals. So even though we were in the lesser competition, the fact that we got all the way to the final meant that we generated almost as much money from UEFA in 15-16 as we had in 14-15, when we only got through to the I think group of 16 when we went out to Real Madrid. Wages, though, did see a very significant increase. So it was 166 million in 14-15. And bear in mind that would have been a season when bonus payments would have been earned by players for the Champions League. That increased by over 25% to £208 million. So 15-16, 208 million, which meant that the wages to turnover ratio was 69%. So how is it then that the wage bill increased so much from a Champions League season to a Europa League season. And bear in mind, yes, we had, some, players on big contracts coming in like Benteke, but as we touched upon earlier, we also had Gerrard's very large contract go off the wage bill. And the key reason behind this is what we talked about on the last pod, which was the incentivized deals. So it was the incentivized contracts, which by this point were really starting to kick in. And it was showing that, the extent to which bonus payments were having an impact on the wage bill, because clearly there were no Champions League bonus payments being paid out in 15-16. Yes, there would have been bonus payments paid out for competing in the Europa League, but those bonus payments would not be as high as making it to the Champions League and competing in the Champions League. So the bulk of the reason for that significant increase, that significant jump, is due to, by this stage, the majority of the first team squad moving on to these heavily incentivized contracts. And hence the wages to turnover ratio was 69%, which is definitely on the high side, and is something that the club clearly wanted to address. Now,
Mo, can I just ask a question on that? On the detail, when when you do wages here, does that include the cost of sacking the manager and all this stuff, or do you always put that in a separate line?
That's accounted for separately, so that doesn't come under the wage bill.
There was obviously a cost of sacking Brendan and all his team as well, wasn't there? Which would have been a non-trivial sum, shall we say? And then there was obviously. Yeah. And what about the wage? What about, say, agents' fees? Because it was at this point where we started paying more in agents' fees as well, wasn't it? That was a change of strategy. Does that come under wages, or again is that a different type of item where it's itemized?
Yeah, that's also a different item as well.
Okay. So that's all on top of wages. That's all on top of.
That's right. Yeah, that's it. So I think for Brendan and his team, we had to pay out 10 million, possibly a bit more than that. And interestingly, one of the things I forgot to mention last time is that for the how many months was it? 5 months, 6 months that Hodgson and his crew were in charge at Liverpool, they were paid over £8 million to move on from Liverpool. Over 8 million. And just for context, Rafa, when he moved on just about 5-6 months prior to the Hodge moving on, he and his crew received a smaller amount of severance payments compared to Hodgson and his team. So that 6-month period, Liverpool Football Club paid out over £15 million in severance payments to managers and their support staff. And we paid out a few years later, obviously, with Brendan. I think it was about 10 million, possibly slightly more than that. And that would have been on top of the wage bill and on top of the £7 million that we paid out to agents that season. So yeah, big money. But the other kind of big cost area is obviously on this around transfer fees, and that season of 15-16, we paid £100 million towards transfer fee instalments. So clearly, we signed a number of players that window. We had signed a number of players in summer 2014, and so that amount of payments was very significant. We did, though, bring in 62 million, which was by far the highest we brought in a season in terms of proceeds. That would have been largely to do with the sale of Suarez in the summer of 14. So the net transfer fee payments amounted to 38 million, which was 13% of the overall turnover. So if you add the net transfer fee payments with wages, the ratio relative to turnover was 81%, which was an increase compared to the 2 seasons prior. But again, we were starting to see slight signs here in 15-16 of this kind of slightly altered financial model, which was about incentivized contracts, hence the wages bill going up quite significantly. And we were about to see a sharp increase in payments to agents as well.
Nicely summarised, mate. Nicely summarised. Right, so I think we've already touched on it in the last pod. I can't remember. I think we have touched on all what we did for the recruitment and how, when people left. I think the Gerrard bit we didn't, but I think we covered Firmino and Benteke and Klein.
Well, we just got Ben. I think we need to go straight to Brendan's first winter window.
The first
Klopp's
first winter window.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it was Corker and Gruitch, right?
Yeah.
Corker,
the emergency loan who played.
We only just got paid for Gruitch now. Look how long it's been.
I know. Didn't Corker only get on the pitch like 3 times or something?
Yeah, he played up front as well
against Norwich, 5-4.
Just a pain in the ass up top. The last time he used a big man up top.
Yeah, it's amazing though when you think about where we were when he took over the dysfunction. That even inheriting somebody else's team and signing nobody, you can still get to Europa League final.
Yeah, I think there was a heavy indication that the good times are coming. Obviously, still lots of doubters to become that would go and be. Well, there's still some people that don't believe. Well, actually, everybody believes in Klopp, so that's true. This was the start. There was some really amazing nights at Anfield. This season. From what we suffered the previous year to this season, guys, there was a clear difference in mentality from the team. Even when the chips were down, they pulled themselves through some crazy, situations and put out some amazing performances. Still,
the Man United Europa League tie.
Yeah, 2 of them, both of them. The one that we won, and then the one that Coutinho scored away.
Yeah,
that goal will always be one of the legendary goals at Old Trafford, just because the way De Gea was peak at that point. Literally everyone was sucking him off, right?
Yeah.
And Coutinho destroys him with that
dribble, and he dribbles in from Henry-esque from the wing, doesn't he, into the narrow from a narrow angle and just lofts it over him. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, because what you saw was that player start to lift in terms of Coutinho started to become what he was going to become. Do you get what I mean? He was fulfilling his potential, and that's what the manager brought with him more than anything. You give him raw talent, and something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the change in Phil, he was good, but under Klopp he became world class.
Yeah,
completely. This season was. I mean, there was a game at Man City that we beat them away.
That was about 3 weeks in, wasn't it?
Emre Can and
it was Firmino, wasn't it? It was all about Bobby, wasn't it?
Integrating Bobby with all the other players. There was quality there. Emre was playing really well as well. For him, they were all. It was just such a big. Some of us couldn't believe the switch from one season to another. That we could pull out these big wins against big teams. Obviously, we were finding it tough against the Dross, but
absolutely,
it was just phenomenal.
The record against the top teams was tremendous. I was going to say, Gags, that the 2 players that were most prominently hammered in the Neil Ashton hatchet job from when Brendan was briefing him against Edwards were Origi and Firmino, and Origi was obviously a big star in the Europa League campaign, wasn't he? Those games there, he really did. He actually was in the team first choice over Sturridge on merit for large parts of that running, wasn't he, in 15-16?
Yeah,
until that horrific injury.
Yeah, it was basically amazing against United, amazing against Villarreal. The highlight reel turn in the corner. By the main stand and the Anfield Road end, where he turns the defender, does that flick.
Bobby.
Bobby. Yeah. It's literally legend. Whenever you see a Bobby highlight package ever of Liverpool, it will be that turn will be in there.
Yeah.
It's just one of the things that's synonymous with him that season, that first year. He was pulling out all the tricks and again fulfilling the potential that we saw in the Champions. In our committee podcast.
Yeah.
Where we said we should sign him. We got to get that in, guys. We got to get that in.
Yeah.
And he's gone on to become a Liverpool legend. Enough said. I mean, yeah, it's not a coincidence. It's all under Klopp, right?
But exactly. But you see the difference between the two managers. One of the managers wants to pick the players that he signed personally and marginalise the ones he hasn't signed. The other manager just looks at the squad of players and thinking, what's the best way I can put these pieces together to win me some matches? And what's the most effective way I can deploy them and use them? And that's what it should be like. Absolutely what it should be like.
Agreed. It's a model. So, they've got to try and do it.
People say, well, the model doesn't work, right? People say that the FSD model didn't work, and it didn't work because one of the pieces in the model didn't play with the other children. So you had somebody in the model who was actively fighting against everybody else. So you have to get somebody who's going to sit and work and do their role, do their job as part of a cog in a wheel for the whole system to become more effective. And by the way, I'm not saying Klopp is a cog in a wheel at all, by the way. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you have to have everybody pulling in the same direction.
I completely agree, mate. There's no doubting that. It's like we said, repeatable events is only possible when it's like a machine, right?
Absolutely.
If it's not a machine and it's one of the cogs goes wrong, your machine's bust. That machine ain't going to go nowhere. It's not. It's just going to stop, and that's what Liverpool were. It had stopped dead, and it was just loads of quality pieces everywhere, none of it moving.
It's like that Homer Simpson car in The Simpsons where he designed the Homer car.
Yeah, imagine it like that. But as soon as Klopp comes in, he buys in. He knows what the club wants. He knows what Edwards is talking about, and he's
worked under a director of football at Dortmund for 7 years.
But he Klopp must have gone and looked at what Ian Graham and everyone was doing, right, and just went, "What the flying hell is this? This is nuts!" Because he's an open-minded manager. If anything, now you look through the 6 years that are gone, look at the marginal gains that he's tried to, introduce or accepted by
throwing coaches.
Loads of coaches.
Ridiculed by Andy Gray.
Absolutely, but every single bit has improved us. You don't end up going for a quad without something going right.
Yeah, last year it was the neuroscience, trying that, wasn't it? Yeah. Marginal gains.
Now there's an osteopathy expert joined this year.
That's this year's one, is it? This year's angle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's always something that they're trying to add. There was a throwing coach at one point. There was,
He's still there.
Of course, but my point is, it's like literally every year they're thinking of something.
Absolutely, you can't stand still.
Could that happen under Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. And Leicester seeing it now, aren't they? They're stagnating.
Would it have happened under Sekeni? I don't think it would have. It needs a certain type of manager, and I think what it is he's in this. He's modern. He's open to new things, technology, the works,
ideas. Also, experts, Gags. His in my opinion, his biggest strength is that he knows his own weaknesses, and he's not afraid to give other people who have more expertise in some areas, right? And he's happy to defer to them. That is absolute mastery of leadership.
Mate, the stuff like letting Buvac go, things like that. Like, people thought it was the end of the world.
Yeah.
People thought, oh man, we're never going to play good football again. And last year, we just played some, there's been, to be honest, the league winning season, we were just a machine. Like, play well, shut off, shut the game down, bang. Like, play for 10 minutes, shut the game down, bang. It was literally that. But last year, we played football last year. That first half of the season was tremendous. So yeah, like you said, decisions, everything in hindsight looks like it's gone well, Darth. But let's move to the next next season, shall we? Because is there anything else you want to bring up from here? Is there outgoings that we want to talk about in 50?
No, we should just crack on with that first full summer because that was and then and all the stuff from there because it was a doozy.
So 2016-17 then, Mo. Let's hit this because there's a nice increase here.
Okay, so 16-17 was the first year of the new broadcast deal with the Premier League, and that's helped to propel income overall to 364 million, which was an increase of just over 20% from 15-16. And 16-17, by the way, was a season in which we saw no European football whatsoever. So no Champions League, no Europa League, because we finished 8th, as we know, at the end of 15-16. And, that just shows the level of increase in the broadcast rights fees for Premier League football. Because had we even got to the Europa League in 16-17, our turnover would have been hitting around the £400 million mark, which would have been an increase of nearly 100 million, or approximately 33% from 15-16. So that was a very significant increase. Now, the wage bill stagnated. It saw no increase, really. And a lot of that was down to the fact that we played significantly fewer games in 16-17 versus 15-16. And obviously there were no bonus payments to pay out for European competitions. And I think as a club, we played about 42 games all season, something like that. So, it was...
That's mad. That's unheard of in a club year.
Yeah, because
I think 21 less than this season.
Yeah. So it was a very quiet season, certainly in terms of games. We had some decent spells between matches that season for sure, and it's fair to argue that was part of the reason why we were able to get from 8th to 4th, is that we were able to concentrate on making sure we got to the top 4, and obviously we'll come on to those that we recruited over the summer. But just on the transfer fee payments front, so again, we had a big year in terms of outgoings, 97 million, though again, we had a good amount of income coming in 58. So the net transfer fee payments amounted to 39 million, which equates to 11% of the overall turnover. And what this means, interestingly, is that wages plus the net transfer fee payments combined amounted to 68% of the overall turnover. And 68% was an improvement on the 81% the season before that, 76 before that, and 77 and 85% in the seasons before that. So for the first time, we saw that overall ratio reduced to less than 70%. And it was just as well because that was the season when we had to start repaying the main stand loan. So the main stand had been completed ostensibly in 2 stages. So as we'll recall, the first stage of that was around September of 2016. And we remember Sadio Mane scoring on his Anfield debut in front of that main stand and celebrating in front of that huge stand. And we were also then obviously planning ahead to redevelop Kirby, and we were also progressing with plans, albeit slowly, to eventually start phase 2 of the Anfield expansion with expanding the Annie Road end. And by the way, we already had our design for that expansion all the way back in 2016. But obviously, it was only very recently that we've finally gotten around to starting that work. But that's basically where we found ourselves, in a different financial position of 68% of our 2 biggest cost areas, transfer fee spend plus wages, 68% relative to turnover. So that was a very healthy ratio. And that was the number that it appeared FSG and the club were looking to settle in on as a bit of a sweet spot, which then allowed them to have enough funds to deliver all of the capital infrastructure that they were looking to undertake with Anfield's redevelopment, Kirby, and one or two other things. So finally, that financial model, all predicated on self-sustainability, was really starting to mature and was starting to pay dividends on that front.
Yeah, Darth, this was a good transfer window, actually, looking back.
One of the best, isn't it? This one of the best.
Yeah,
do you want to list them, Gags?
Yeah, Joel Matip, Ragnar Klavan, legend. Loris Karius, ouch. Jorginho Wijnaldum and Sadio Mane. I mean, you can go through there and say Matip, Wijnaldum and Mane.
Even Klavan was a decent signing, to be honest.
Yeah. No, but as I said, he's a legend.
Yeah.
Legend. He was a legend. He was really good when he played, and we really enjoyed some of the crazy things he used to do. Scored some big goals as well in the end. But point is, he was solid enough. He got us into part of the puzzle is to get into the Champions League, and he was one of those that got us there, and we have to appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
18.5
million
points season on season, Gags, to get into the Champions League. Massive.
30-year-old we paid 4.5 million for.
Yeah.
So that's one of those out.
Looking back, that's probably one of the biggest. The Middlesbrough game is one of the biggest games of the Klopp era, isn't it, Gags? That to get in on that last day, and to get 76 points from 58 the year before, just
missing Mane
campaign.
for the end of the season as well. Yeah. We were missing Mane because he did his ankle, wasn't it, against Everton? Was it
Everton? Yeah.
So he was gone. Origi was the year before against Everton. So always we seem to lose players against Everton. If you look at it over Klopp's time, even Van Dijk, really, Matip, Thiago. How many players have we lost to injury?
Dogs of war.
It's unbelievable. But yeah, I think you're right. I think but still, Matip, Ronaldo, Mane literally went on to win almost everything apart from
9 out of 10 signings, all of them. Maybe even a 10, you could say, argue.
Yeah, those three.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
One important thing about this window is that this was Edwards's window, like Julian Ward last winter when we signed Diaz, right? He wasn't in full control yet. He wasn't yet sporting director. However, he was in his shadowing period of taking over because Ian Ayre was still technically in charge of all the negotiations at this point, but he was handing over more and more to Edwards. Edwards actually became sporting director in November 2016 and Ayre left in February 2017. So this was very much, you can imagine that the club was saying to Edwards, well, tell you what, Ian's still around, you go ahead and do this stuff, and if you need Ian, he's on hand to support you and give you some, whatever. But you can imagine that even though he wasn't technically SD, a bit like Ward last winter, it was effectively his window as well, yeah. So this was the real start of that. So yeah, important in the terms of the change of roles, but definitely from this winter window, he was in full control of everything. Then Edwards.
I mean, the outgoings here, Mo, as well. There was 13, nearly 14 million for Joe Allen, and nearly 30 million for Benteke.
Got a money back.
Skirtle went for 5.5. Canos went for 3.6. We had
Ilori almost got money back on him.
Yeah, and then also Luis Alberto went for 3.6 as well. So he found a way, to get the money together.
Yeah,
to go and buy those players. 77 million there that came in. That's mad,
good trading. Saka went out on loan, didn't he?
I think. He went out late. Yeah.
Important change, wasn't it, Gags? Was it when was the no dickheads policy?
No, Saka was the next year, guys. He played this year. It was 17-18 that he went.
Because his drugs test was against after Dortmund in the Europa League.
Oh, he went out on loan first and sold a year later. That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. He went out on loan this year. That was the big shock, wasn't it? Because he was well on his way to play for a long time for us.
And Wada had never
he missed.
Wada had never had to, other than a cursory apology for effectively ruin somebody's career and ruin it. They've never really had to pay any penalty for what they did with that botch test.
Yeah, that's it. But I think with Sacco going, it felt almost less so about that whole drug test and more about other issues. I mean, do you remember the reports during pre-season where he, his timekeeping wasn't the best, and
he
maybe
wasn't he vlogging somewhere and putting
No,
stuff on
he
social
was
media?
he was vlogging with LFC TV,
Right.
but he was getting in Klopp's face. You could remember he was getting in Klopp's face and stuff, and Klopp gave him a couple of, there were some words that came up on LFC TV, like as a joke, but kind of backhanders.
Yeah.
Make sure you turn up on time, and then we'll talk. Things like that.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden he's gone because he's literally missed another training session.
Yeah.
And that, I think, so the stuff where we're laughing at Ten Hag, right, and his commandments and all that, we're laughing at him, but the thing where he said, talking about missing training sessions or being late or whatever, literally Klopp went through that and enforced it and was ruthless with it.
You've got to do the basics, Gags. You've got to have discipline.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and because that decision there has ultimately borne fruit, because we are a very, very disciplined club now, even now still, because of all the spade work that was put in with things like that, and you always called it the no dickheads policy, guys. We don't sign players who've got any, after Balotelli anyway, don't sign anybody who's got any hint of trouble.
Yeah, it set that marker down, didn't it? And it kind of drew that line in the sand to say, right, okay, these are the expectations, and if you are a big personality, fine, but as long as you know what the boundaries are, and if you're willing to stay within them, you'll be fine here. Whereas if you want to veer out of it, if you want to try and challenge us, be a bit of a rebel, then as we now know, you don't even get a look in. You don't even get a chance to even get considered to be signed by the club.
Basically, the club is, and Klopp is like, if you want to be a dickhead, you be a dickhead, but you don't be it with the players, and you don't be it when you're representing the club at all. And that's it with your fellow, players and with the fans. You need to have respect, and if you don't have that respect, you can get lost. What you do in your own house, nobody finds out about it. Fair enough, because players have egos. They're gonna 100%. They got egos, but they're having to really work hard to like Mane and Mo. They were competing with each other all the time, but it was that was that was there. There was an ego there that they always wanted to be the best at the club. That was 100% there, 100%. But what Klopp forces is no. Doesn't matter. You can still go for your own targets, but you got to be teammates, and you got to work together, and you got to work hard. And that was always evident on the pitch that they did, regardless of what people said, they didn't pass to each other. They did. There's loads. There's too much evidence of it. So yeah, it's good, and it's silly to ignore. If let's say they haven't got egos, they do, but that's the quality of the manager, right? And then how the rest of the club enforces it. So Klopp doesn't have an ego himself. The staff won't have, the management won't have. That if they all, like you say, if it's all repeatable, then everybody starts to do it. And when the players come in, and if you've got the likes of, I know people don't like it, but Milner around, who work exactly the same way that Klopp wants you to, people look up to him, don't they? As the elder statement in the squad, then people will follow. And that's as simple as that sometimes. It really is. It works in teams if you start building them as well. If you're going to behave the way you want your team to behave, if you start to be stupid, then they will do the same thing. If you don't, it's just really good leadership. It's servant leadership as well. Servant leadership is massive. You literally go through the ringer yourself, and they will follow that way.
I remember reading, Gags, I remember reading in Rafa Honigstein's biography of Klopp, and he basically he talks about Klopp's upbringing in that particular area of Germany, Swabians, and he says of all that they're almost a unique part of Germany, not almost slightly different cultural identity to the rest of Germany, but they're quite Christian, but also they're extremely hardworking, even by German standards, and the focus on discipline. And being entrepreneurial with it, innovating, but also just based on everything based on hard work. And I think you can see that, can't you? In the very start of this Klopp era.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. Okay, so this year we qualify for Champions League. So Mo, this leads in really well into I mean the outgoings 16-17, we've already talked about them. Yeah, they all went. All the crap that he didn't want, basically. There was a whole load of people that went for free as well. Enrique, Toure, Rossiter, Texera, Jerome Sinclair, Yessel, Yessel. That was all those went for free in the end. So he got rid of a whole load of players too. Tidied it all up, and we roll into 17-18. Oh, so this was a big year, man.
Yeah. This is a good window. I guess it's a good window.
Yeah, let's talk about how much we earned then this year before we get there.
Yeah, so this was, as you say, the season where we qualified for the Champions League, and for all intents and purposes was the ushering in of this new golden era. And the turnover saw a huge increase. £455 million. So, at that kind of level of turnover, we were finally getting into super heavyweight territory when it comes to the giants of European football. So clearly an increase of nearly £90 million over the previous season's turnover, and that's almost entirely because of the fact that obviously we got all the way to the final of the Champions League. Now, the wage bill went up significantly too. So it increased to 264 million from 208 million the season prior, which was an increase of just shy of 30%. So it was very significant. But what
That's
it showed...
humongous.
Oh, yeah. I mean, can you imagine, anyone in a normal job getting a 30% increase in their earnings in a year? But basically, that was it. And bear in mind that the bulk of that increase would have been earned by the core players of that 25-man squad, not evenly distributed. So this is where, for the first year, even though this was Mo's first season, obviously we'll come on to his signing in a moment, but his earnings, when you factor in 44 goals and the bonuses that come with that, the win bonuses, getting all the way to a Champions League final, in his very first season, he would have earned significant amounts of money on top of, I think his base is signing, his first contract was about 80,000 a week, something like that, 80 to 90. So, with the bonuses, we would have been talking easily 200,000 plus straight away in season one for him. But 264 million. So that meant that the wages to turnover ratio is 58%, which is healthy. It's still healthy, despite the very significant increase in the wages bill. Transfer fee payments then, this saw a huge increase. So it was 97 million the year before. We paid out in this season £154 million. So obviously this is transfer activity relating to that window, but obviously covering some of the payments relating to signings from summer 2016, summer 2015 even. So 154, though we did generate 105 million. And bear in mind, this is the season where we did lose one of our key players to Barcelona, which again, we'll come on to in a moment, which meant that the net transfer fee payments for that window were 49 million, which equated to 11% of turnover. So when you combine wages with the net transfer fee payments, the turnover, so the overall ratio was 69%, which was only 1% increase on the season prior. So now we begin to see a bit of a pattern here that the club is looking to come in at around the 69 or just below 70% in terms of wages and payments towards transfer fees. And that was 2 years in a row that we were coming in around that mark, despite the very significant increase in spend in the transfer fees, as well as on wages. And then the final point I just wanted to make here is that this was the first season where Michael Edwards had a full summer transfer window. And obviously we'll come on to the work he did then. But during 17-18, we spent £27 million on agents or intermediaries. And this, I think, was a very deliberate strategy. Michael Edwards came into his role as sporting director without any prior experience at that level. So he needed to establish himself. And I think that part of the strategy behind Edwards forging these links around Europe and be able to sign, top players was to arguably overpay against for agents. But, you can definitely argue that it was money well spent because, the spend on agents' fees is aligned to our success on the pitch. So, there might be people that will think, okay, but, agents are a cancer in football and the this and the that. But, whatever our thoughts about agents and, their role within football, they are still very, very influential when it comes to wheelings and dealings and players ultimately joining or not joining a club. And I think that was part of a deliberate strategy of Edwards initially trying to curry favour with some of the agents around Europe, and that spend was, in my view, evidence of that.
Do you think it's fair to say, Gags and Mo, that if you're that confident in your talent ID and then you can do the attraction with Klopp, that there's absolutely no point losing a player, the right player, the one that you want, over a few million on an agent's fee? So they just simply say it's part of the deal. We're really confident it's the right thing to do, so we just pay the agent fee just to get it over the line.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
100%. Yeah. That's fine. A lot of people will get pissed off with it. Why are we spending so much? But dude, you're not going to get the best players without it. Basically, those agents need feeding. And they probably have teams as well, and they have probably like shitloads going on with it.
But it's not just signings as well; it's renewals, isn't it? Contract renewals as well.
Every single thing. But the most incredible thing out of what Mo's gone through here is that obviously the net transfer fee payments and wages and turnover is still 69%, which is from 68 to 69 in a year. But how smart the club were to recognise that we're getting bigger now. We're going to earn more money this season. So what we're going to do is we're going to 100% put on some cash for, put some incentives in these big contracts for these players. Because Sadio probably already had an incentivized contract. Now Mo's got one. Robbo's come in, definitely on an incentivized contract. Oxlade-Chamberlain's come in, and this season played unbelievably, right, on an incentivized contract until he got injured, the poor chap. But do you get what I mean? You could see that there were people coming in and literally earning their coin here now. And how smart was it to move into this kind of model for the club and the team? And just pretty much it's just run itself. The club has run itself through paying these players this money means that they go on to achieve things. But it's literally not affected their net transfer fee payment and wages to turnover, but it's gone up a level. I mean, that's incredible, right? Surely.
Mo, when you sent the figures through, I just looked at how if you put them if you put turnover on as a line on the chart and you put wages as a line on the chart, they'd both be going up, but they'd both be increasing at the same rate. And if you look at the percentage from year to year, and maybe from year to 2 years ahead, the leaps are identical, which tells me that this is very carefully planned. Yeah, Mo, to keep them in such lockstep over 3 or 4 year period.
Yes, totally. They'll have, as a club, a very well calibrated, financial model, and clearly, things can happen. Not last season, but the season before, we did come perilously close to missing out on Champions League football.
Yeah,
and had we missed out, that would have then had a knock-on effect on our income for last season. Now, I think we would have still made comfortably top four in 21-22 regardless, had we ended up in the Europa League last season. But clearly the club has a model in place which is flexible enough that if, for example, we didn't make Champions League and we lost on lost out on that income stream, then our model would flex accordingly, and we then spend obviously less on wages because we've got incentivized contracts, and if players are not in the Champions League, they'll be paid less. And likewise, we then scale perhaps things back on the transfer activity front, and that's the way that the model is set up. So it is very, very well developed, and it's a system that is also based on the long term. The long term is based on continued sustained success, which then helps generate more by way of sponsorship deals. And we'll see that in the coming weeks when the next shirt sponsorship deal was announced. And, we're going to then see in a year's time the opening of an expanded Anfield Road end. And when all of these things come to fruition, our turnover will be exceeding £650 million in 23-24. all being well. And that kind of money is absolutely mind-boggling. And the kind of figures that, even if you'd mention it to, a Kieran Maguire, for example, 3-4 years ago, he would have laughed at you. He would have said, no chance. But, such is the maturity of the way that we operate at all levels, not just on the pitch and on the coaching front, but, even in terms of doing business and all the rest of it, that it's just all setting things in place to ensure that we have this continued success, and we continue to build and build, and that's what's so exciting. It's a sustained sustainable model, and this is not something like a Chelsea where their sugar daddy owners rode off into the sunset. And yes, they've got a new owner in who's spending a bit of money as we speak, but he will operate that club in a very similar way to FSG. So beyond this first transfer window, Chelsea fans better get used to seeing their club operating within their means, and that will be a culture shock for many of them.
Are you saying that Koulibaly is their Andy Carroll moment? Was it? I saw something like 120 million in fees and wages for Koulibaly, age 32, 33, and 34.
Can we just? I know I hate them, and I don't really want to focus on them too much in this book. But yeah, I agree, Darth. I think it might be. I just want to point out that this might be these 3 years, and we haven't got to 18-19 yet. But we're looking at the figures, and when we get there, we talk about them in next 10-15 minutes. This is the zenith of running a football club. This 3 years, 16-17, 17-18, 18-19, is unbelievable in terms of that is just the achievements is off the scale, and I mean, this is incredible. It was incredibly run football club. There's nothing better than
the
that.
Whole football operation. You're right, Gags, and this is when our analytics had the biggest gap, biggest advantage over everybody else. This is when everybody's catching up a bit now on the analytics side. Everybody's doing more and more good stuff, as we know. But this is when what we were doing was so far ahead of everybody else.
And let's go and talk about the players that were bought these 2 windows. So it was the summer and the winter window. At the end of the day, Naby Keita was already signed here in terms of, we'd said we're going to sign him and buy him next year. So we'd already picked out Naby. Andrew Robertson, gone on to become a legend. Ox, unfortunately, fell off after the first year, but superb that first year. You could tell why they got him and paid the money, the 35 million for him. Mo Salah, 37.8 million. I mean, is there ever been a better signing? Money?
I was going to say, you just said him, Andy Robertson.
Robertson's achievements have been amazing, but when you compare it to the product and output of Mohamed Salah, I mean, it's inconceivable the amount of records this boy's got under his belt now. I mean, looking back, you think everybody was like, "Well, Mo Salah, really?" Like, everybody. I don't care.
Chelsea reject, Gags.
Who it was. Even I thought, Mo Salah, really? Okay, then Sadio Mane worked. Mo will work. You started to believe a little bit then, right? We were talking about the recruitment at this point, and but with Mo, it took us. Remember, we did that special pod on Mo the first time we did something on UP, Darth, for a player. And we looked at it, deep dive in his stats, look at his goals. We actually analysed video.
At the end of October, didn't we? Start of November.
No. It was before he joined. We
Before he joined.
We did something on his goals that he scored at Roma, and trying to predict stuff. And we're like, this is going to be special. This is going to be special. He's going to be a special player. He's going to be really good. And then obviously we bought Van Dijk in January. But yeah, this. Again, he should have been bought in the summer.
Important one on the Van Dijk one, then, Gags. This is something where we've learned lessons and we don't deviate. The target was Van Dijk. We didn't get it because Southampton were determined to punish us for the way we conducted our business, right? I can't remember, was it Tom Werner they said was bragging about or talking about? So there's one of the hierarchy. They really objected to it, didn't they? Yeah. Everybody was saying, we've got to sign a centre-half. Got to sign a centre-half. We need one now. But then they said, no, the target is Van Dijk, and we were going to wait till the next window. And we've seen that play out repeatedly, that we aren't prepared to compromise. We want to stick with the top target wherever possible. And that is, you don't compromise on your top targets, Gags. And I think it's a valuable part of the strategy, isn't it? It leads to a lot of frustration, I think, Gags, fair to say, amongst fans. But
there was massive. We were all really upset. We all.
But in the long run, it's the best strategy.
Yeah, well, I'd rather get him than anyone else. I mean, imagine if we'd got someone else now instead of him, and we listened to the fans that said no. While you're waiting, go get somebody else. I think more what it was, people were pissed off at the way that we'd behaved. And an apology had to be written again. And at this point, apologies were coming left, right, and centre. So, that's where the frustration was not with the recruitment side of things. That was all going really well, but some of the decision making at the other end, from those that aren't actually day to day running the club and sitting in Boston and doing silly things. That's very soon after, he wasn't running any part of the club anymore, and it was Mr. Gordon who was running the club. So people were punished for that, right? And that's fair enough, and that's how you learn a lesson. You say, right,
and they made us pay. And they made us pay 75 million.
Yeah, they did, big money, but worth every penny. Absolutely worth every penny. Statement signing. We needed, I think we were going to buy him no matter what, and I think Phil was going to go in the summer. I do think they delayed Phil going because because of what happened with Verge. I really do. And I think loads of people don't believe that, but I think Phil would have gone to Barca that summer, late in that summer, if we'd got Verge. But what happens is we get to witness Coutinho with Mo, Mane, and Bobby. And it's the most spectacular thing you'd ever seen for a first half of a season.
Yeah.
The Champions League was just totally lit up, completely lit up, where teams behave differently in the Champions League to the Premier League. We know this. Premier League teams are going to come and sit tight, whereas Champions League teams, they're all champions or they're all top four of their league. They're going to go for it.
Yeah.
Or most of them did, especially with Liverpool that year. They said, fuck this, we're playing. So now, at this point, we just twatted everyone or scored loads of goals. It was, again, phenomenal start to the season. So much fun watching the birth of Mane, Bobby, and Mo.
Yeah, that was the Red Arrows team, wasn't it, in Europe?
Yeah.
That one, yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
That was fun.
Outgoings.
Yeah. Outgoings, go on, yeah.
17, 18 outgoings.
Lucas Leiva, 5 million.
Not much to. Yeah, it was Sacco, 25 million. And Phil. That was the money. There was the money. Yeah, 150 odd million. Which Mo's put as well there. Well, proceeds was 100, but there was 25 from Sacco.
Yeah, wasn't it? So 100. In the sheet there was 108 million, but there was another 34 million in add-ons, wasn't there, or something? Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course it was. Yeah.
104.
Yeah.
We didn't realize
the add-ons didn't come through. Yeah.
So just on that, sorry to interrupt, Dan, but so the way that that deal transpired with Coutinho's sale was that we actually sold that fee to a third party. So basically, we then cashed in.
Was that later?
Accepted a lower...
Like the year after or something, or no?
No, so we did it at the time, and I think we did it at the time because I believe that Southampton were demanding the bulk of the 70 million up front, and so we needed money, and we knew that we were selling Felipe Coutinho, so we got that money almost in advance of that deal going through, in order to then make that very, very significant payment to Southampton at the start of January. And then I think that what happened was, based on the accounts, is that we didn't actually receive. So if the guaranteed fee was 106 million, I think we actually sold it to another company for about, say, 100 million. And so we were then guaranteed 100 million to basically come in, perhaps 50 million straight away, and then the other 50 million the following season. So when you see proceeds of 106 million there, that won't all be the Coutinho money. So we sold that debt. Sorry, not the debt, but the money that we were due to receive from Barcelona to a third party financier, and it meant that we then didn't have to wait over a period of several years.
That as well, though, Mo? Looking at Barca now, how smart was that?
Yeah,
very good business. Yeah, because they owe money to people left, right, and centre, don't they? And that's why they've gone into complete desperation mode. And selling the crown jewels now.
That
his value as a player fell by 85% in 3 years. It's just incredible.
But guys, the Coutinho deal is the start of their downfall. That is what.
Yeah, it was Coutinho, Dembele, and because after it was all after Neymar, basically, wasn't it? They never recovered from that.
No, that was it. But yeah. That's when all the good stuff started. So I think now, 18, 19, this is literally, again, Zenith season. These 3 seasons, Mo, are... When I look at it like this, how you've laid it out, it's incredible, mate. It's just... I don't know if we'll ever have 3 as good seasons as this in terms of how a club is run. That is just phenomenal.
Yeah, so, I mean, 18, 19, turnover saw another significant increase, £533 million. So we had we saw commercial revenue increase very markedly. So off of the back of getting to a Champions League final, shirt sales were skyrocketing, which was coming towards the end of the New Balance deal. We had a renewal of the standard charter deal at the beginning of that season, which increased it to a base 40 million a year. We were into year 3 of the Premier League deal. Champions League, I think, had an increase compared to the previous seasons. So £533 million was a turnover, which was just eye-watering figure. Our wage bill, though, saw another very, very, very big increase, all the way up to 310. So compared to 16-17, it was an increase of nearly 50% in 2 years. 310 million. So this was a season where we got to the Champions League final again, but we actually won it. So therefore, the payments we would have had to make would have been significantly more than for when we got to the final but finished runners-up. On top of that, our performance in the Premier League was absolutely staggering. Unbelievable amount of wins. We racked up, 98 points?
97.
97. So clearly the amount of win bonuses, goal bonuses, clean sheet bonuses, all the rest of it would have been huge as well. So 310 million was the wage bill. That means the wages turnover ratio is 58%. Our net transfer fee payments were 59. So this was based on 174 million pounds being paid out, with 115 million pounds coming in. And so when you combine wages with net transfer fee payments, in terms of ratio, it's at 69%. So 3 years in a row, 68%, 69%, 69%. That is very, very, very good business. And it shows that we had this sustainable model which could flex. So if the turnover decreased, it would be because we were less successful, which meant wages would decrease with it. And, transfer fee spend is obviously within our control too. So, it was a model that wouldn't then keel over if, we didn't make the Champions League and all that. And that was the beauty of this model. Now, and the interesting thing, and, as James mentioned in the chat, was that, this somewhat contradicts the point that Professor Stefan was making on Money Talks a couple of weeks ago. And, you can certainly argue it both ways. He firmly believes that incentivization doesn't really make a tangible difference. But then if you look at this evidence, it's certainly very persuasive in the other direction to say, well, look, Liverpool Football Club moved to this incentivized, wages structure. And it went from being a club that regularly finished 6th, 7th, 8th, averaging about 60 points a season, 62, 63, all the way up to, 70, 76, 75, and then into the 90s. And we've stayed there, bar one season ever since.
If I'd have been on that podcast with you, right, at that point, I would have said to him, to the professor, do you have that opinion because you're taking that view in aggregation? You're looking at the average across all clubs, right? In reality, there's always outliers.
Yeah.
And
there's nobody, a professor, whoever, will convince me that incentivized contracts didn't work at Liverpool. I'm talking Liverpool.
Yeah.
So
could
that's our podcast, right? Is a Liverpool podcast.
Absolutely. He could be making a general point across the whole industry, and that's fine. But we're definitely an outlier. We're not the same as other clubs in this period. Absolutely not. We're the bleeding edge.
Yeah, and that's a combination, isn't it, of the management. So that's the combination of Klopp plus this model. That's the key. It's having the right manager at the helm.
Plus the analytics, plus the resources. Yeah.
All of it. So that's what I'm saying. That's the model. The analytics, the resources. That's the model. But then the manager to make sure that the players give it, want it. Go for it.
Yeah.
There's that intangible. There is that Klopp has this. Wherever he goes, he has this ability to lift that team 10%, or even if it's 1% in football, it's massive, right?
Yeah.
That he's able to do something with them, and I think that's the key. Him being here makes that work even better. And see what happens with a Brendan in there. It falls.
You just can't attract the players. Brendan couldn't have attracted Van Dijk.
One of the interesting things about this season also is that we started this season having been one of the hottest commodities in world football. We got to a Champions League final. We played some of the most attractive football that had been seen for years. We were a club that many footballers the world over wanted to join. And we heard about it, we read about it, and there were players that were the consummate professionals who wanted to join Liverpool, but there were also dickheads, and plenty of them that wanted to be part of what we were doing. And we were able to bat those off and say, look, not interested. And again, it just shows the reversal in fortunes from a club that struggled to attract top players only about 3 years prior to that, to where we were by 2018-19, where players were clamouring to join Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah. And this 3-year cycle, Gags, just to summarise, right? Year 1, Wijnaldum, Mane, Matip. Year 2, Robertson, Salah, Van Dijk. Year 3, Fabinho, Alisson, Keita.
Shaqiri as well. Shaqiri made a big difference.
Yeah, and he's your 4th best signing. Wow, that's still amazing. Yeah,
exactly. For 13.75, we sold him for not too much less than that. But that
it's like Ox is your 4th best signing in year 2. Klavan's your 4th best signing in year 1. Yeah,
you don't win that Champions League, dude.
No.
Superb,
so even your 4th best signings were still good.
Yeah,
and that's what people talking about. People talking about Spurs, right? Fine, because they've got a good manager, so they've had a good window, right? I keep saying to them, the fans on Twitter, come back to me when you've had 5 or 6 windows in a row like this. Then you're going to be a contender. One window isn't enough.
And if you look at the profile of the players bought over those 3 windows, then Matip was 24, Wijnaldum 25, Mane 24,
Yeah.
Robbo 23, Ox 24, Mo 25, Van Dijk 26, Naby 23, Fabinho 24, Shaqiri 26, Alisson 25. Like, that's
sweet
the
spot.
spot.
Yeah.
Absolute sweet spot of getting that, the recruitment of the key, players and the oh man, and we forget that at this point Trent is coming through.
Yeah.
Because we haven't even mentioned Trent. Like, it's something that Trent will never get mentioned in a recruitment pod because he's blooming come through the academy.
Yeah.
But there's this big added thing here that he's allowed a player to come through, and Pep Linder's got to be credited as well, because he's the one who pushes for some of these players to come into the squad. He's doing it still to this day. The articles come out on LiverpoolFC.com that Pep Linders is picking his youth players this season to play, in pre-season with the first team and see who's going to end up training with them for the whole year. That's literally an annual thing going on now.
Yeah.
Just to because you never know who's going to be the next Trent. Because we've had it happened once. It could happen any time. One of these players could just click in a system, in a role, or just have that confidence. Trent playing with some of the best players in the world is what has got him to where he is. That confidence, that belief, all of it has come, the ability to because he's got the ability, but to get that out of someone. A lot of people, there's Ibes and there's, other youngsters that could have gone on to become something great.
Yeah.
But something just didn't click for them. Yeah, they showed loads of ability, and maybe they could have. But this guy just went through the roof.
We're on the sales as well, Gags, in this summer.
See, this is a bit surprising because Mo, this is where you might need to come in, because Solanke obviously 12.5 and Ward.
No, 19 million Solanke.
Yeah, 19 million and 12
plus a sell on.
But what I mean is, it's only 33 million, but in the record it's 115, right? So is that some of the Coutinho money in there as well then?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it'll be some of the Coutinho money, plus even some of the I think Benteke money possibly.
Sacco probably as well, a bit in there, an instalment of Sacco money as well.
Yeah, because bear in mind, in the same way that when we sign a player, we typically pay over 3, sometimes 4 installments, which are spread out over a couple of years. So the same will apply to players that we sell on as well. So, when we, sold Mane in the last several weeks, we're going to be getting payments from Bayern Munich over the next couple of years. So they would have made an initial payment in all likelihood at the point at which the deal was struck and signed. And then there'll be another payment, likely in a year's time, and then the final payment in the summer of 2024. And so that is the kind of lag that always exists. So it's not just with these figures money that relates to activity in that window alone, or that in that season alone.
Yeah, and just on the trading model, Gags, that you talked before, obviously Coutinho was the peak, right? But then you've got Danny Ward signed for 500,000 flipped for 12.5 million to Leicester. He played.
This was the peak year. This was the.
I don't think he started a Premier League game. I think he started a couple of cup games maybe. But Dominic Solanke signed on a free transfer on a tribunal. No, we might have had to pay a nominal fee on a tribunal for him, right? He got quite a few starts under Jurgen. Never really made the grade. Didn't really look at like a Premier League forward. And then we sell him for 19 million with a sell-on fee.
Mad.
That's the kind of elite microtransactions, a little bit more than micro, I suppose, Gags, that we do lots of these micro transactions, each one making it as a success.
Mate, this year, because we're not going to cover 2022 because we haven't got the figures, they don't come out till next year. But this year, we got money from Grujic, right? But then we sold Grujic to Porto and got an option. So gave them a discount and got an option on Vieira. Or is it Vieira? Yeah, Vieira, who's gone to Arsenal now, right? So they came to us and said, do you want Vieira? You've got first dibs because you gave us a discount of 2 million. and Liverpool said no, we pass. And because they passed, we got paid 2 million. So the discount, we got paid the discount back. So literally, Arsenal paid the money. They paid us 2 million. Like,
Brilliant.
that is what you call elite. You know, that's the margins, isn't it? Fine margins. Like, if Vieira is going to be great, we might go for him. Has he got to where we want to get to? No, he hasn't. And we had 3 years option on it. And that's like, again, another marginal gain, right? A couple of million here and there.
I mean, but to go ask Mo a question as well, but this is basically how John Henry made his money in the first place in the 70s, wasn't it? Because he was a commodity trader, and he was looking to buy very, very small chunks of whichever commodities it was, beans and things like that. But he was looking to make a profit on each micro transaction. And then you add up all those microtransactions and all those micro profits, and all of a sudden it's a very big number.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. And that's where we've had to benefit in that kind of way from a very nuanced model in order to try and counter the oil millions and billions of other clubs. Because clearly our ownership, operate, and they've made it very clear and are transparent about it from day one. We will not spend our own money to finance this club in the way that other owners do. Now, I personally have always held the view that, if the owners at times when it's required can put in a little bit of money of their own money, then, that sometimes is good. It's not a good model to have for your owners to be ploughing in money season after season, because if that ownership falls upon hard times outside of football, or they decide to sell on, that can have a material impact on your club. So clearly it's not sensible for an ownership group to be putting in money season on season in the way that City's owners clearly do, and obviously Abramovich did at Chelsea. But nonetheless, it's a model that they were very clear about from day one, and so it has had to be one that is as smart as possible to give us any chance, any prayer of being able to compete with, not only a City but even Chelsea in the way that they've operated. Because it wasn't long ago, we're talking only about 2-3 years ago, that Roman Abramovich put in £250 million in the space of about 18 months into Chelsea. And this was at a time, by the way, when he was apparently growing disinterested in the club. He had largely moved to Israel. He was barely turning up at games, and yet despite that, he was putting in more money than ever. And that's a kind of competition that we're up against. It's not a level playing field. We know that the regulators and administrators in football have no spine, no backbone, and can't enforce their own rules if their life's dependent on it. So, we're up against it, good and proper, and the only chance we have is to operate in an ultra smart way, and that's the kind of model that FSG have put in place.
Yeah, agree.
Agree, mate. Absolutely superb. So we haven't talked about the players yet, have we? Or we have. Actually, we have. Yes, we've talked about who came in. We lost Branniger. No, we lost Emery Jean on a free. Danny Ward, Clarven for a couple of mil. Well, we still sold him for money. Jesus. Dominic Slanky and obviously Lazar, unfortunately. Markovic.
Yeah, that wasn't a profitable microtransaction. That was the opposite.
Oh, that was the opposite. But I think he was destroyed by a manager, to be honest. If there's a blueprint of destroying someone's confidence, Lazar Markovic
with a young player. Yeah,
that's Lazar Markovic. Regardless of what anyone says, that guy had some talent, but.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Klopp got a Markovic, what he would do with him. Yeah, it's going to be a very different story, I reckon.
But I think he was already done by that point. He was going to never.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like an undamaged. Yeah, an undamaged. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Question, Gags, because we've already done an hour and 10. How much do you want to focus on Are we going to call this the COVID years?
Yeah, I think we could cover these together, right? Because the transfers, it was still big money spent. The net transfer fee payments for this one is massive, right? This is the biggest year. This is crazy, Mo, because this is a COVID year. And we said we didn't spend any money, but it's the highest net transfer fee payments.
Yeah, it was.
Go on,
yeah.
You might as well cover these off, and you whiz through both these years, and then we'll whiz through the thingies and get it done.
Right. So, we talked about repeatable processes, and I think that in another year, we would have again been at around the overall 68-69% ratio in terms of spend on wages and transfer fee payments relative to turnover. But obviously, the COVID-19 came along and ruined everything. So our very well-crafted financial model was not impervious to that. Our turnover was 490 million for 1920. Our wage bill was 324 million. So as a wage bill, it did go up compared to 1819, despite the fact we went out in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Thanks, Adrian. And turnover then took a hit. And had COVID not come along, had we progressed a little bit further in the Champions League, we probably would have been hitting around the 540-550 million mark, slightly exceeding our turnover figure for 1819. Wages bill at 324 million relative to that turnover figure meant that that ratio figure was 66%, whereas in previous seasons that had been around 57 to 58% in that 3-year period we just covered. Transfer fee payments were 122 million. So again, though we spent very little in that window, and we'll touch upon the players, the 2 or 3 players we did bring in at summer 2019, and obviously the one in January 20. The bulk of that payment related to the players we brought in summer 2017, and the big signings in summer 2018. We were still obviously paying those off. Proceeds were 32 million. So that was kind of towards the tail end of 1 or 2 key outgoings from seasons prior. Now, this is interesting. The net transfer fee payments was £90 million. Now, if we talk about this being a very well-crafted model, I'm convinced. So this, by the way, was 18%, or nearly nearly a fifth of the overall turnover, which was a big difference from the previous seasons when it was 11% every single year between 16-17 through till 18-19. So I'm convinced as a result of that analysis that we were lining up a big sale for summer 2020. Now, whether that was a Sadio Mane or somebody else, who knows? But based on the way that this model was developed, I think that we would have been looking to move on perhaps a key player in summer 2020. But as a result of all of this, and obviously our numbers being impacted by COVID, the net transfer fee payments and the wages combined relative to turnover increased all the way up to 84%, whereas, as we talked about earlier, that number had been hovering around 68-69%. And then very quickly, 2021, so this was the season from hell when it came to injuries. Our wages turnover ratio remained pretty similar to 1920. It was at 65%. Turnover was almost the same as 1920. It was at 487 million, just 3 million less than the season before. Wages were down to 316. Now, people had questions on social media. Well, why did our wage bill go down so little in 2021 compared to 1920, when we'd won the Premier League in 1920, and yet in 2021 we didn't win the Premier League, we didn't win the Champions League. We're told that we pay all these huge bonuses. Why was it so big and only £8 million difference from one season to the next? And the simple answer is that in 2021, because the season 1920 ended in the financial year 2021, it meant that wages and bonuses for part of 1920, including Premier League win bonuses, all fell into the 2021.
That famous night in June, wasn't it, Mo? June the 19th, wasn't it?
Or June 25th.
Yeah.
And so had that not happened, then our wage bill would certainly have been south of 300 million for 2021. So that also helped to skew the figures. And in those 2 seasons on the agent payments towards agents front, we paid £30 million in 1920 and 22 million in 2021. And the FA has just very recently published the figures for spend on agents in 21-22, and the spend for that season was 22 million as well. So, overall, a lot of spend on agents' fees, but again, that seems to be part of a clear strategy.
So a lot of that would have been Thiago from, I guess, in the last season, and also, I guess, wasn't Diogo Jota, wasn't he George Mendes?
Yeah, correct. That's right. Yeah,
that'll be a nice hefty fee there, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, he would have earned a fair amount of dough through the deal with her.
Well, I remember Gags saying on the pod not so long ago, we got a good relationship with Mendes and all his players, and I said I can see why, because we pay him a lot of money, so he likes us now, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah, that's the key. That this is what Mo was saying about the agents. This is the key. You need to have one super agent at least, and this is the Mendes era.
Yeah,
this is the Mendes era. Like, there's other players. We've brought in so many players that have helped us win trophies from Mendes.
Yeah. Didn't you say he was involved in the back of the Nunes negotiations, telling them
Yeah. Nunes changed representation just to get this transfer done. Because if you want to go to Liverpool, Mendes will get it done.
Yeah.
That's literally how it works now, I think, with the Portuguese players.
Not just Wolves, it's Liverpool as well.
Yeah, Wolves is different, right? If you want to go to the next level, where you're earning big money, where you're talking 500-600 million.
Yeah, Wolves is a stepping stone for them.
Yeah, of course it is. Wolves fans might make you think that we got rich owners and they're going to be the next brilliant thing. And look what happened after that. They went to shit. But this is the real deal, right? This club we support, we're very lucky. It's the real deal in terms of if it gets it right, and it is getting it right off the pitch, and you get the right manager, and we do have the right manager. This is the time to enjoy it. It's going to be very hard to replicate what we've just discussed from 2016 to 2019 as a well-run club on and off the pitch.
Question for Mo from our man in the chat, Mo. The 1920 season, 122 million for transfer outgoings. That seems high considering we only signed Minamino. Can you explain?
Yeah, I did explain a few minutes ago. So, we obviously pay for transfer fees over a couple of years, over typically 3 installments. So, though in 1920 we didn't sign many players, the bulk of that 122 million related to deals that were put in place in 17-18, 18-19, and maybe even
Alisson.
Alisson, Naby,
the
possibly,
big deals.
Mo as well. So obviously, between summer 2016 and summer 2018, we did spend a huge amount of money, and we were paying all of that off, right the way through till the 1920 season. And even into 2021, because even in 2021, our spend was, and this is, by the way, is cash spend. So, like I explained in part 1 of this podcast, amortization is the accounting treatment. That's not what you need to pay attention to. It's the figures in the cash flow statement in the accounts, which actually shows the actual cash that were transferred out of a club to selling clubs. And in 2021, that amount was still £90 million.
Question for you from me, Mo. What's on the turnover line at the top here, the COVID years? Was the turnover hit all on match day revenue, or were there other hits as well to be had from the COVID period?
So 1920, there was approximately £12 million hit on match day revenue because we played the final 4 home games behind closed doors.
Right.
And there was a minor hit on commercial due to the club shop being closed toward the tail end of the season. And there was also a hit on broadcast revenue, but that only came through in 2021. So there was a deferment of the rebate we had to pay the Premier League in 1920, and that was deferred into 2021. So again, how that, and we were the hardest hit of all of the Premier League clubs, by the way, when it came to that rebate. So I think had it not been for that rebate, our turnover in 2021 would have been over 500 million. And that was a season where our matchday revenue was, I think, £1 or £2 million. In a normal season, it would be £85 million. So,
But Mo,
yes.
another question for you. When people said, we just won the Champions League and we didn't buy anyone, now your stats here, your numbers here are proving why we did not spend too much on buying players, because we had a shitload of money that was already going out for players that we'd spent over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and let's not forget that,
right? 84% net transfer fee wages turnover, massive.
Yeah, and let's not forget that on top of that, we as a club made the decision to bankroll the redevelopment of Kirkby without taking out any borrowing. So we looked to pay for that the money that we were generating from broadcast revenue, commercial, etc. There was no, and that was a 50 to 60 million pound project that was paid over 18-19 and 19-20. So there were people that were wondering, well, where was the money going? I did post the thread, I think it was sometime last year, that showed that for 19-20, well, this is where the money went. And it's not as if it was going into the pockets of people. We as a club, decided to spend this money on, infrastructure and the stadium. And if you look at Arsenal Football Club, when they moved from Highbury to the Emirates, and you look at the spend of Arsenal under Arsene Wenger, certainly in the first few years after the move, they spent very, very little. And, that again was for a reason that they operated in a sustainable way under David Dean, and wanted to make sure that they weren't going to moving into any financial uncertainty by spending beyond their means. And we had to apply the same when undertaking all of these projects. Money doesn't grow on trees, and the money has to come from somewhere.
And I think you both agree, getting this stadium to over 60,000 fans in there is remarkable from where it was before they joined, right? That'll have a significant.
I never thought it would be possible, Gags. As a Liverpool resident, I never thought that area of Liverpool, beautiful. You could actually get a 60,000 seater stadium.
Mate,
in that
that
area,
stadium,
in
that end is going to look beautiful. It's going to look as domineering as the Kop now. It's just going to look so nice.
It is. But they've had to close they've had to agree to another highway being closed, the Anfield Road now, because the stand is actually going to be over the old Anfield Road, isn't it? And they've had to do the whole public works program, rerouting the traffic and everything like that. It's all part of the bigger system.
Fully covered. And then on top of that, Mo, you talked about Kirkby as well. AXA. You can see the benefit of AXA just by, some of the videos you see. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? Just the whole thing just looks so much more professional, so much more, it's closed off, it's private. They can do way more. I think even that as an investment has such a massive, for the players as well, in terms of their recovery. They've been able to do so much more. And again, those marginal gains we talk about, all these people that they brought in, they can house them there nicely. There's room for everything. There was no room in Melwood for any of this anymore.
No, hemmed in
and
on
to bring
all
it
sides
all together, it all together as well, like the youth and everything's together now, isn't it? So
it is,
makes it all better for the club as a whole, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And just very quickly going back to the expansion of Anfield, and we talked about marginal gains. Yes, recruitment has played a huge factor in our turnaround under Jurgen Klopp. But I think we also have to give some of the credit to the Anfield crowd as well, in terms of giving us a bit of an edge when it comes to performance at home. And I think that the expanded stadium has helped the atmosphere, certainly in terms of the bigger games. And, our kind of record since expanding the stadium, if you look at it on a points per game basis, the 6 years since then compared to the 6 years prior to then. I mean, granted, our players in the last 6 years have been a lot better than 6 years prior to that, but I think some of the credit has to go to the fans as well.
There's a synergy
it's
to
like
it.
a second cop, isn't it? The upper main stand.
Yeah, but it's a synergy though, Darth, as well. There's a synergy to all of that.
Yeah.
Better facilities, more fans, better players, more money. All of it, it's hand in hand, right? It can't happen without all of these are little pieces that go
just
to
even
the
things
puzzle,
like the concourses in the main stand and the way it's organised. It's just an amazing
I only buy tickets in the main stand, mate.
Yeah, amazing.
That's the crazy thing. I want to sit with a bit of leg room. I want to sit a bit more comfortable. Yeah. When it was new, I was buying corporate tickets all the time. I was like, I'm gonna go sit in a leather seat.
Oh, in the dugout, yeah.
In the dugout. I was like in the dugout, the chemistry. I was like, I'm gonna go try this. You got to experience it, right? If the club's put something out there, that's the whole point. Just give it a whirl. You love the club. You want to. I really enjoyed those things. They were great in the main stand. And my seats, Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup, that's the ones that I can get. They're all in the main stand whenever I get them. Every single one.
Could I ask one final question to Mo? Could I ask him to put your black magic sorcery hat on and tell me what your estimate is? Because it's not long till Deloitte Football Money League now, is it? What's your prediction for our turnover in 21-22 with our first year after COVID?
So I predicted it would be around £580 million, which is just absurd. It was just so big as a number. I think our wage bill will grow as well. So I do predict it will be topping 350 million. But if you compare that to the overall turnover I'm estimating, it's still thereabouts 60% or just under that. So it's getting back to where we would want it to be, 58% or under. And I mean, I predicted 580. Yeah, I predicted 580, and I know that somebody I spoke to said that people within the club are expecting it to be pretty close to 600. So it'll be in that region, 580 to 600 million, which is just ridiculous. And as I mentioned earlier, when the new shirt sponsorship deal comes into effect in a year's time, which is also the same time that the new expanded Anfield Road end opens up, we're then at that point talking 650 million plus, and that is just crazy.
There's going to be corporate facilities in that one, isn't there, as well? The new one.
Yeah, of course. More corporate seats. That's where they make the money.
Question from James in the chat. Do we have any idea on the repayment term for the Anfield Road, and how long will it pay for itself in additional revenue, and how many years is that? Do we know any of the calculations involved in that?
Not as yet. No, I think we'll probably have to wait until the accounts are released, which will only be in the spring. Well, March at the earliest. Because what I haven't heard about is the club taking out additional borrowing for the works. Now, what they did do was take out or exercise a revolving credit facility of up to £200 million when the pandemic first came about. And they hadn't repaid all of that in 2021. And I think that they kept some of that back for funds to then deliver the Annie Road End expansion. And the estimate for that had increased all the way up to £80 million. Had they completed that straight after expanding the main stand, that expansion of Annie Road End would have been 50 million. But, it's all easy to say with the benefit of hindsight. Nobody knew a pandemic was on its way, which will then result in construction costs skyrocketing. But
I hope we got our steel on a fixed rate, Mo.
Let's hope so, because, oh my word, steel prices increase even more than petrol prices at the moment.
I'm sure that would have already been paid.
So your estimate, your wizardry is 580 to 600 mil, yeah?
Yes, correct.
Okay, yep. And then we'll know that reason. We'll know that. What is it about November? Deloitte's when they come out, October, November-ish.
No, it'll probably be around January.
Okay.
Though I think this year it was all the way around February, March.
It'll coincide.
But normally they aim to get it out January, so that'll be the first indication of how big the turnover is. But yeah, a lot of it is predictable actually, because we generally know what the Premier League prize money is. Yeah. We generally know what the match day revenue will be, what also the Champions League money will be. So the unknown is commercial revenue, but almost certainly, I mean, the 218 million that we generated in 2021 should be exceeded by a few million at least, and that is where I was then able to arrive at 580 million. So I was predicting 230 million of commercial revenue, and that figure probably won't be too far off. And if it is different, if anything, it'll be slightly higher. And
do you think we'll have a higher turnover than Man United this year when they're published?
I think it'll be very close. Well, for 21-22, they'll probably be neck and neck. I think we might just have slightly pipped them. But yeah, their figures will be out very soon because they're traded on the New York Stock Exchange. They'll have to have their figures out in, I think it will be September. So
that's one to watch.
We'll see then.
If you'd have told me 10 years ago, right, under Hicks and Gillette, that we'd have a bigger revenue than Man United in 10 years, I would have said, you're on drugs, mate.
Yeah, me too.
You're absolutely on drugs.
I know we're getting close to 2 hours here, guys. So I just want to rattle off the names because you know these players that it's more recent. So I'm going to rattle off the names that we actually paid for, not freebies that we paid for since 1920. So that's Harvey Elliott, 4.3 million. Takumi Minamino, 7.25. We made a profit. Costas Tsimikas, 11.75. Thiago Alcantara, 27.4. Diogo Jota, 41 million. Marcelo Pitaluga, 1 million. I think he's going to be a buy and a half, by the way. There was something about him today. He apparently he's been amazing. Is it Macclesfield he moved to? There's a story about him like saving them in this one game he played or something. Literally just kept everything out and was man of the match. So that's really good. Ben Davies at 500,000 so far is what we paid. Cade Gordon 3.4 million. Konate at 36 million. Luis Diaz 37.5. Darwin Núñez 64 million so far. Calvin Ramsey at 4 million and Fabio Carvalho at 5 million. There are some very, very young players in that list, guys. Literally, there's a change, a real big change of 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds joining, 20-year-olds as well. It's literally a big, big shift, by the way, in the last 3 years in how we're doing stuff. Big shift.
Konate and Jota only 22 as well, so.
Yeah, big shift. Little bit younger. Just gone a tad below the 24 and 25. They've got the world-class guy at 29 that they couldn't pass on. And I think everybody wanted him. No doubt, Thiago. It's a generational type player.
Can we just say, Gags, that summer 2020 window, look at that now. Costas, Thiago, Diogo, woof.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, mate. I think Pitaluga's going to turn out... even him. He's going to turn out to be unbelievable as well, watch. The Brazilian keeper. So, I just... Yeah, it's such a... Whatever we did last year was down to that window as well. Do you get what I mean? They were phenomenal last year, all of them. Jota, Thiago, and Tsimikas, Costas. They were all phenomenal when they played, whatever part they played. Even if Tsimikas didn't play too much, he was brilliant. And then last year we brought in Konate only, who was fucking unbelievable. Diaz comes in and he rocks the place. Like, he played for 30 minutes yesterday. We watched a friendly yesterday, and I tell you what, every time he got on the ball, I wanted to stand up.
Is that exciting?
He's so exciting, mate. So, and that's what you want, right? When you're watching the game, you're looking forward to shit like that. You know, I really want to be excited by my team. I do, and I think we've got tons of it, and we've got Núñez and, you know, Fabio looked really good with his touches. Bobby looked good. It's nice when the old guys look good too. So, I mean, Elliot as well. So assured. I just think that we're on the precipice of something special again, guys. And I think we're very lucky as fans to have.
That's a good place to leave it, Gags.
Yeah,
Nice place to sum it up.
Absolutely, really lucky to have a club run the way it is, and fingers crossed they get one more over the line this summer. Fingers crossed. Whether it's for this year or next, I don't mind.
Well, have a great holiday, Mo.
Thank you. All
Well
packed and ready to go.
Thank both.
Excellent.
Thank you
I
both for
expect
3
nothing
hours
less.
of your time as well. Really do appreciate it.
Yes.
I'm so glad we didn't do this on my dad's birthday. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, you were cracking the whip yesterday, yeah, because that's why we did it quick.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. Thank you both so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for listening and being patient with us as well. And I'm sure there's going to be loads more content coming your
No
way.
pods from me for the rest of the week, Gags. 3 nights in a row, podding.
No problem. Thank you, Darth. Appreciate it. I'm sure they loved it. And we'll be back soon. I'm sure Mo will be back after holidays. Darth will be back next week at some point. And
yeah, Monday.
We might do an old school somewhere as well. Who knows? But yeah, catch you all soon. Thank you for listening, and up the Reds.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.